You know the Magna culture, right? Nobody works for me. You people work with me. I'm working for you. The history of mankind has always been dominated by the golden rule. Here's the gold makes the rule. But I don't want to be dominated by anyone. If I feel that strong, I should not be able to dominate somebody either.
Hello there, and welcome back to a great conversation. Another one with the one and only, the icon, the legend, the myth, the man, and not any ordinary man, but the Magna Man, our friend, Frank Stronach. Frank, good to see you as always.
It's great to be here, Richard.
Frank,
it's nice to be with you.
I was about to say the same thing. Having conversations with you is like good medicine. You know, it's always something that leaves me knowing more, understanding deeper, and getting a little bit more moved, motivated, energized by a man with a vision for a better Canada. So thanks for all these great conversations.
Well, I guess if you reach a certain age, you go through so many experiences that you and you record that in your mind, right? And you bring it forward. And I think especially the later years, it's always where you said, is it good for me, my family, for our employees? Is it also good for society, right?
Well, I think in all the conversations we've had, many people who've been watching you, whether they've been a fan, a friend, a follower, some people who've been former employees of Magna for 10, 20, 50 years, they're all truly following you because they know you're a man with vision, a man of conviction. But nothing beats your conviction for the love you have for Canada and wanting it to be better again. Let's start with a revelation you had, which is interestingly dated. It takes 50 years to realize when something really doesn't work, given day one compared to year 50. Our lifestyle, standards of living, they are under attack and they're lower than ever before. Would you agree, Frank?
Well, it's, democracy's got an Achilles heel. And so what is the Achilles heel? The Achilles heel is that the bureaucracy creeps up slowly. It's not overnight, right? So every year you have maybe 2 or 3% more bureaucracy, right? So if it's 10 years, you got the bureaucracy has climbed, I would say, the last 50 years, at least 500%.
Wow.
Okay. So, so what you have is, well, there's a lot of people out there which mean well. They say, look, we need protection for this, protection for that, but in life, you always got to take a bit of a chance, a bit of a risk, and I've always have it compared when a family has kids, right? Parents, usually that's the most thing they love and worried about it is kids, right? But we all know you can't lock them up in a rubber room.
No.
So you let them out there and you gotta let them play and experience things. And sometimes you wonder, when some of the kids have a massive injury, right? Fall off a tree or whatever, right? And so, so sometimes we ask, is there God, right? Is there justice? Is there, what is it that a young innocent kid has a major accident?
Yeah. It's interesting as you speak about children and families. I've been completely and utterly speechless with the growing number of everyday Canadian families confronted by a very daunting truth and reality that things are getting harder. That as they look out into the horizon, the future for their children and their children's children, they don't see the same Canada that I grew up in. They don't see the same Canada that you built billions of dollars in revenues, tens of thousands of jobs from, an industry second to none. It's not the same Canada as it used to be. And it's scary, Frank. What would you say to those families about the future of Canada?
Well, there is, I consider myself very fortunate that I have accumulated a lot of experiences or wisdoms, and I have a conscience, right? Sometimes I think why I'm doing all this thing here, right? Because I'm spending, first of all, a lot of monies, but monies is just a material subject, right? It's time, right? So when you have monies and you got time, you want to utilize your time, right? But then I'm saying it to myself, Frank, just, life's been great to you. What you going to do to give back to life, give back to the country, right? The country's been great to me. And it just, when I arrived about 70 years ago, people were helpful, right? And so again, it's about 60 years ago, or 65 years ago, that I opened up my first small shop, right? Okay. And I've mentioned that a few times. It was a small building, about maybe 300 square meters in size, maybe like a 3-car garage, right? And I rented that and put a sign up, Tool and Die open for business, right? I didn't need any permits. I did not, nothing, right? Okay. And I just went in the nearby factories and I said, can I speak to the owner, right? Even though I was young, why would an owner speak to a guy which is, maybe 23, 24 years old? But I always had a lot of self-assurance, and usually it's the kind of question you ask or the statements you make, right? Which will get you the attention, right? So if a young person says, look, I'm very good in solving problems, please let me take a look at some of your problems. If it doesn't work, you don't have to pay me. It's a pretty strong statement. So some elderly say, look, should I give that young kid, should I give him a problem I have? But I obviously solve problems because after 1 month I hired a worker, right? After a year, I had 10 workers. After 2 years, 20. Okay, but it's an evolutionary process, which take place, and you take it from there.
Well, and as a part of, I think, the evolution of you, my dear friend, Frank Stronach, not just the Magnum man, but a good man, a philanthropist. You're not just an employer. You've been an innovator. You've been an industry disruptor. This is why you weren't just limited to expanding factories. You built racetracks. You built communities. You helped restore them even after storms and disaster. But I would say, my friend, for the sake of this conversation, that you actually were the first to provide conscious capitalism. Conscious capitalism. You put consciousness back into capitalism, because as you turned employees into partners, your fellow employees into shareholders, you turned your foremen into partnerships. It was a part of your conscience. It was just good business. That's what gave rise to your fair enterprise methodology. That became the DNA, the backbone to what made so many great people that worked for you prosper with you. Where did that come from for you, Frank?
Well, basically, you sit back and sometimes you picture the world go by you and you try to evaluate situations, right? But you come over and over to who rules the world? Okay, so there is an expression, right? What we call the golden rule, right? And I'm saying the world was always dominated by the golden rule. Okay, and still is. Basically, now, but you don't see the rulers no more, right? The rulers might be in Hawaii, they might be in Beverly Hills, they might be in Monaco, but they're basically, I'm saying, now I would use the slogan, the financial elite. They're out there, right? And they don't want to share the profits with the working class. That's the dilemma. So basically, we are dominated. And when I look at myself, do I want to be dominated? That's basically nobody wants to be dominated, right? If you'd be a secretary in a factory, and you want to have a dominated boss, you wouldn't respect them, right? But there's no, yes, we have people which have responsibilities. Some have more responsibility than others, but so anyway, you constantly try to look back and look, it's not that long ago that the cavemen still were around, right? And then you had the hunter and the hunted. And then you had the kings and the servants. And now we have bosses and unhappy employees. So we go to evolutions, right? They may be a few hundred years. You have some major changes in society, right? When you look to the Egyptian Empire, to the Roman Empire, etc., right? And the American Empire, right? So you go to different stages, right? And you adjust and you try, you always try to, but in the final analysis, right? Again, from time to time, you got to look in the mirror and talk to yourself or think about yourself, right? So about when I was 80 years of age, I looked in the mirror and say, Frank, you've been missing a lot. You had a chance to have much more input, to have a more civilized society, because we still have a very uncivilized society, right? So what do I mean by that, right? I was fortunate that I've been on the board of directors of about 8 universities. But first of all, I give lectures, right, in university from Harvard, right across the United States, right across Canada, right across Europe, right? So, but there again, I said to myself, university have great faculties, especially in regards to medicine, technology, the arts, but very little on humanity, okay? So, again, you come to try to reason within yourself, what is the mandate of a university? The mandate of a university is to teach young people how can we have a more civilized society. So universities would be ideal institutions to work on structures. What structures do we need? Which would lead to an ideal society. We have no structures at this time. We have no roadmap. We have we practically got nothing, right?
Well, and I just want to slipstream with you there, because I think for many people who've been watching you for some time, listening to you, inspired by you, intrigued by what you're saying, I want to backstop a couple of things that I'm realizing. And I know that the team here, from our production head, Michael, to, of course, Ivana, Cynthia, and the rest of the team that supports you, that I love that first, you are the catalyst to the evolution of Canada. And it's not evolution of the people, it's evolution of the mind. This is not a revolution. Let's be very clear on the distinctions. What that gives rise to is you now, Frank, being an instrument for impact, which is why I believe you authored this book right here that sits before me. I know, if I may pick that up so I can give it a proper shot. I mean, this book right here is not just a man's philosophy. It's not just a collections of your thoughts and ideas. That's the roadmap. The Charter of Economic Rights and Responsibilities is a vision for the Canadian people in its future. So when I see that, I see this as the roadmap for a civilized society, one that allows everyday Canadians share in the economic pie of this great country. Would you agree with that, my capture of what you've said thus far, Frank?
In a way, it's a roadmap, and but there's still a few things missing to have a very civilized society, but this is the first step, and I highlighted 7 principles, right? With the hope, gee, can we find consensus, huh? The more principles, the more you have on a thing, the more difficult it will be to find consensus. So mine, I can over and over. The number one principle, a country should not have debt. Okay, should have balanced budgets. Because every housewife knows she cannot spend more than what her husband can bring home, right? Or if her husband runs the kitchen, right, and the lady works. But anyway, they cannot spend more than what they earn.
Got it.
Otherwise, they wind up in a poorhouse. Every farmer knows he cannot spend more than what he gets for his crops. Otherwise, he loses his farm. Every small businesswoman or businessman knows they cannot spend more than what they make on profits. Otherwise, they go broke, right? So why do we let that happen, right? It's a common sense question. Why? So we got to find a way that politicians must adhere to some rules. Because society cannot function without rules. Are they civilized? Are they democratic? Are they there's a lot of questions we need to answer, right? So anyway, rule one is we must have balanced budgets, right? That means politicians cannot print monies.
Let me ask a quick question, not to interject, but I must. What causes a budget to not be balanced? You've run a multi-billion-dollar company, employing more people than some countries have people. How can a company operate unbalanced financially? How does a government not run a balanced budget?
Well, it's basically when I talk to young people, yes. Okay, and we should talk a little bit about the Stronach Academy, right? It's called SAFE. So the first thing is you got to tell, we like to assist and we like to guide, let's say, kids coming out of university or out of college, right? Where they say, gee, I want to be in business. I want to start a business. So first of all, I said, look, you gotta, when you be in your early 20s, you don't know yourself quite that well. You gotta do something what you enjoy.
Right.
And if you enjoy something, you're gonna be good in it, and you have an interest. And I've always say, if you put in the extra effort, then you could be, call it the best, whatever it is. If you be one of the best, money is a byproduct, right? But how can you get to that stage, right? To that stage first, work for somebody else. And try to find out if you like that work, right? If you find out that work, if you like it, that's great. Then you work for a while and save some monies. And start out small. And always said, make small steps, and start making bigger steps once when you have accumulated already something, right? But so if something doesn't work, you don't have to, you're not really intact, right? You just lost some monies, but
Yeah.
And that's not, it's not a shame to try to start out and to lose, right? Because there's so many examples which some last quite a few times, and all of a sudden the fourth or fifth try, they hit it big, right? So you gotta applaud entrepreneurs which tried a few times, right?
There's an old proverb, a Polish proverb. That's for our, of course, chief of staff here, Ivana, who's listening in intently. She publishes and produces our shows. But the Polish proverb goes that you can take a tree down with a spoon. It's not the smartest, but through persistence, it will work. And so entrepreneurship's a lot like that. Sometimes you have the wrong tool. Maybe you're going at it the wrong way, but through persistence, through resilience, through hard work, it might come down.
Yeah, but nowadays entrepreneurs have access to a lot of new technology. It wouldn't cost a lot to get a chainsaw and cut the tree down, right?
You got it. You got it. Now that brings us to SAFE, because the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship does just that. You know, when we step back and have studied you and of course celebrated you, Frank, reverse engineered you, published our insights about you, the team couldn't help but realize that you're not just a man that built an incredibly successful business that redefined not just an industry, but a country. Success leaves clues. So in the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, inspired by your Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, moved by your New Wave Common Sense Business Association and the mandate for small business owners to think big and start small, SAFE, the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, was the place where we taught people how to start, scale, and succeed in business. And so to your point just there, like maybe a spoon might work, but a chainsaw is a lot smarter. It's just good common sense thinking. What excites you about SAFE, Frank? What excites you about that?
Well, basically, I think it would be better if more people would be self-employed. Okay, so I'm trying to get the message across. It's not that big a deal, you know. Work for somebody, save a little money, and you know, and focus on something, you know, what you could do with a small spoon.
Exactly. I like that. But being self-employed seems to be one great approach to an uncertain economic future for people of all shapes and sizes, young and old, whether those who are looking at a second career or a third business opportunity, to young people graduating from school and seeing a very daunting reality where employment opportunities are very low. Your solution is like, think for yourself, create something, build something, innovate. That's what you're thinking. Build yourself into an entrepreneur.
Yes, basically, there's a reason for everything here, right? Canada was settled by a lot of immigrants, which, you know, might they come from Ireland, Germany, Italy, or the Ukraine, or whatever, right?
Austria.
Okay, well, Austria, right? Usually, they come to hard times, right? And they had things to do with lawyers or financial people, and they thought, gee, I hope my kids one of those days will be a lawyer or a financial guru, right? Okay, so and the kids are sometimes influenced by their parents, right? And influenced by society, right? But we sort of didn't highlight, right, that if we be in the trades, right, you could be a lot easier to get into business for yourself, and a lot more opportunities than if you be, call it a financial tax expert or a lawyer, right? Okay, you get very one-sided when you be, when you be a tax expert or a lawyer, right? Whereby when you be in the trades and you're faced always with different solutions, right? With different to do things, right? So I think in the final analysis, if you come up with great gadgets, this is where people make the most money, right? To produce something.
Or to take it back to the beginning of your start is to solve problems. Find a problem, find a challenge, look for the crisis and solve it.
Yeah. Or a problem or solve where there's a need, huh? Okay. It's solve where there's a need or something you could do with which makes life easier for people, right? Okay, if you come with the gadget, and say, gee, you could do your whatever work you do, it's a lot easier, right? If you got that gadget, right?
Well, and I mean, you speak with experience and absolute expertise. I mean, you said it earlier on. You could be sitting on a beach in your Austrian Speedos, working on your tan, happily into retirement. But at your stage in life, you're still solving problems. You focus on Frank's Organic Kitchen Farming Systems, where you believe in organic foods and organic consumption. You believe in health. You believe in saving the world through electric cars, micromobility that gave rise to Sarit. So you're not looking at investment opportunities. You're looking at the world's greatest challenges and solving them still. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I would say I'd be guided. What would be helpful for people?
Right.
What would make life easier for them? Right. Okay. And that might be gadgets, or there might be food, right? Because food is people gotta eat, huh? Okay. So there's a lot of room in to produce foods, right? Okay. So anyway, the message I always try to get out to when in your early 20s, you don't know yourself. Experiment a bit and find out something what you like.
And I think that's the challenge. The way the educational system is designed currently, we don't give children, we don't give kids, teens, in their early formidable years, just as they're about to enter adulthood. You've often said this. We should give them a couple of years to get into the skills trade space, learn themselves, discover themselves. What do you say, Frank?
Well, it is, again, look, you don't want that. There's always exceptions, right? But our school system is lacking things, huh? Okay, it needs to be renewed, right? Okay, it needs.
Can I offer one?
It needs where we wake up young kids and young students and say, look, that's what the world needs, or that's the way things should be done, but it's not. It seems the common sense, okay, it seems it's missing.
That's right. I wrote the word down. I wrote it right here. I was going to interrupt you and say, I would offer that school systems, from teachers, the system, the teaching methodologies, the approach, the way of thinking, it all lacks common sense. What do kids need today, given the times we're in tomorrow? Not what did we once teach 10, 15, 25 years ago. These times have shifted, and we need to better prepare young people for a new future.
Well, that's why we have Principle 6 is whereby students in high schools or in colleges or what should stop at grade 10. And then grade 11 and grade 12, students should be exposed to the trades. Okay, so that's a win for the students because he gets more wisdom, or he gets a different dimension. He accumulates more knowledge, huh? And the more knowledge you have, the most likely the higher your pay. Okay, so we should. So it's a benefit for the students to accumulate more knowledge. And it's a benefit society because it's more and more difficult to get repairmen or get tradesmen to fix something around your house.
Yeah. Well, and this is why I really love the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. It's a wonderful place for young people, middle-aged people, or people that are just beginning to silver. Whether you want to get started, you want to scale, or you want to be successful in your business, to build your business the Frank Stronach way, to come to SAFE, to learn from you, to be mentored by you, to learn and gain insights from you, not just your history, not just your incredible works, but what you're inspired by now, yeah?
Okay, we have two programs, right,
yes,
for our students, which have it in mind, gee, I would love to start on my own. And we have small businesses, which might be a few years in business and maybe do call it medium well or just make a little bit of profit, right? They would have to figure out look what you got to do to make more profits and what you got to do to grow, right? And again, it needs different structures, right? It needs a structure, let's say if you got 10 employees, you need a little different structure. If you got 50 employees, you need more of a different structure. If you got 500 employees or 1,000 employees or 5,000 employees, you need different structures, right? So fortunately, I've gone through all those stages, right? And I remember the structures I operated under, right? So we could give hands-on experience to a lot of would-be entrepreneurs, to a lot of small business owners. We could change their directions where we said, look, you've reached a certain point, you got to focus now on this or that. But most of all, when you start out, look, try to find out what you really enjoy, and then try to work in that field for a while, right? To accumulate some experience and say, gee, I could improve something, right? It's already a big step.
It's a huge step, and we thank you for it, Frank. I mean, there's no other entity that leverages and exploits the genius that you possess, the wisdom, the history, the years of having done so well by not just Canada, but many countries around the world. I mean, you didn't just employ Canadians. You built a company that had factories in over 300 countries. So for you, it's so lovely to see that your internal wisdom, the very treasure trove of insights and experiences are now learnable through the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. So thank you.
Yes, but we started out that the country's got a problem, that the economy doesn't function, right? So, and I made a very strong statement, right, that democracy, the Western countries, they all have the same problem. You see, when you look at Europe, at all the Western countries, what you have there is the debt's rising, the imports are rising, and the bureaucracy is rising, right? So how did it get to that point? So basically what we had was we kept stifling the entrepreneurs more and more and more, okay? That we expected already rules and regulation before you even get going, right?
Okay. Bylaws, compliance.
Okay, yes. Yeah. So that's really, I think Canada and the United States about 100 years ago, they were at the height of that thing, right? The opportunities and small business or people starting out small businesses just was amazing, right? And then we got, so the Achilles heel is we got the bureaucracy just been accumulating and accumulating. But let me make some statements, right? A farmer cannot produce foods unless he's got seeds. A country cannot produce products unless we got skilled labor. And we have been totally ignoring skilled labor. Okay, and that's why, if a country imports more and more and exports less and less, the living standards go down. So that's the primary reason, right? If you import more, okay, the living standards get higher with a country which export more and more. So the key is to find can we find the balance, right? Some countries are blessed with wire weather, wire minerals, wire thing here. In some countries are blessed by a good soil, better water, sunshine. So let let the world trade, right? But every country's got to should play towards their strength. But it's important that every country needs skilled labor. Okay, that's so to neglect that's my governments wouldn't get good marks, huh? Okay, and the governments have let the bureaucracy grow to such an extent, huh? And now, no politician would say we gotta reduce the bureaucracy, right? Because they would not be elected, right? So we gotta think what should be the basic framework of a democracy? Who would be to be a politician? That means to serve the country, not to serve yourself, to be thing here.
Yeah.
But now we do it I want to say there are exceptions, right? Okay. Most politicians go in with the full intention, I want to change the country. But when they get in the House of Parliament, the older politicians say, you cannot say that. There's no way we're going to be elected if we say that. And if the other people get in, they're worse than we. The condition would be worse than if we would get in. Okay? So it needs really, I think democracy can only function via an economic charter of rights. But that means, you can only make changes in a democratic way. So my recommendation would be to wake up small business and say, look, you got kids, you love your kids. What you're doing, there's no opportunities coming up. And yourself, you get tied up more and more in the red tape, right? So you gotta band together. You gotta create a political force, right? If there should be no reason, to maybe right now there's about maybe a million small businesses. They are limping and but maybe 500,000 of them would join, call it the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, because that would be a political force. And it's very important, right, for call it economic organization, that they zero in, that they could agree on a consensus, what's really needed in the country. And that's why I left the rules, only 7 rules, that we find consensus. So there's a lot of thought went behind it. It took me a long time to figure out how can we change it democratically? How can we change it for the betterment of all Canadians, right?
And I love that these 7 principles that are found in your Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities is what gives rise to the conversation. So the consensus for entrepreneurs, big and small, is found in a conversation. And that's why you've been wanting to unite their voice, bring them together, sound the alarm, ring the bell, as we've been saying, so that we can actually become one voice, to really become a bit of a gravity and a force for good with those in government, with those in bureaucratic positions, to start shifting their views, to expand their thinking, to shift them towards a more idealistic society in their treatment of policies and their planning, and the process in which they embrace the very people that employ folks, build products, move services. And that's the New Wave Common Sense Business Association.
Yeah, because we have a lot of signs that they point we have a major problem, right? Okay, because, again, I'm using that example over and over. About 50 years ago, when the first computers came on the market, The slogan was, if we got one of those computers, we could eliminate an office floor in a high-rise office building. And now when we look around, I see at least 20 times more office buildings in all the cities. Might have been Europe, might have been the United States, Canada, or any place. It's just in the cities, there's so many high-rises, right? What do they do in there, right?
Yeah.
It's regulations, yes. Some people live in a high-rise condo, prefer that, even though they can open up the window and get good fresh air. I mean, there's so much common sense lacking, right?
You couldn't arrive to Canada today and build the Magna as we know it today, could you, from scratch?
No, I would not even get I would not get even off the ground for my first. Yeah, no, because let me give you an example. And it's so drastic, right?
Tell me.
When I was 80 years old, I say, Frank, life's been so great. What should you do that society benefits more from your experience? So I said, how come all the kids have allergies, right?
Good.
So thing had in mind, when I was a kid, we did no allergies, right?
No.
Okay. So, and then the rise of stage 2 diabetics, etc., right? So I decided I should go into the agriculture because deep down in my heart, I always was a farmer, okay? So, but the more I got in agriculture, the more I could see this huge chemical jungle. 95% of the food eaten in North America comes from industrial farms. In industrial farms, you see no more eagles fly. Why? There's no more rabbits. There's no more pheasants. We spray so much fungicide and pesticides, we practically kill everything. People have no ideas how many chemicals they eat, okay? So we have major problems, right? And then we have that the economy, we import more, the bureaucracy. But I wanted to say, so I started to grow organic food, right? So I bought a farm, and I bought and I got to know for a greenhouse, you don't need no permits. So I bought the greenhouse right away. And I said, gee, I at the same time I started to build the greenhouse, I thought myself, right, I should have a farmer's market too, right, where I sell what we grow in the greenhouse. So we applied for a permit. So after a few months, I don't want to name the township, but after a few months, I called the township, the bureaucracy, and said, look, I applied for a permit to build a farmer's market, a greenhouse of farmer markets. But I said, look, the greenhouse I started right away because I was told we don't need a permit for a greenhouse, but we need one for a farmer's market. So I asked him, how come I haven't got my permit? It's already 5-6 months. Well, I said, well, when we looked at your permit, we found out that your permits did not apply to our bylaws. The bylaws for farmers markets are 3,000 square feet, right? And the thing, and your application was for 5,000 square feet. So we couldn't give you a permit. So I said, that's nice. Okay. So I drew a few other things. There was always something else, right? Okay. So I'm waiting actually 3 years. I still haven't got the permit. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So those look, there's so many people which are waiting for permits. When I built my first new factory, right? before I said when I started out, at least a small building that was out, so I didn't need a permit to build it. It was built. But when I applied to build a new building in Richmond Hill, that's a city a little north of Toronto, I had a set of blueprint. I went to the city hall in Richmond Hill, and I said I'd like to talk to the building inspector. Well, I say, look, we stood us up there as the office of the building inspector and just showed the blueprints to them. So I walked in the office. I showed him I had a bunch of blueprints. The inspector looked at the thing and said, qualified blueprints. They're signed by qualified engineers for snow load, wind load, and sewage. That's great. So, fine, they stamped it, you got right to go ahead, right? Done all in one day.
Wow.
And now talk to some of the builders, right? They have, matter of fact, about a month ago, the federal government and the provincial government got together and say, look, we should do something for that people could afford house prices, the home prices, call it the development cost prices, right? So we pay for those. They did not say, gee, how come there's how come there's hundreds of bureaucrats in small little towns, okay? Okay, so basically the bureaucrats get more monies now and build them a larger thing here, right? And the government will have to print quite a few $1 billion to come up with the costs. It's just makes no sense, right? No common sense. Just getting deep into the hole. Okay? So we gotta wake up the small people, join the common sense. Join the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, because to call it the traditional economic thing, I think they get maybe, I don't know if they get maybe subsidized by governments. But anyway, you don't hear anything from the Chamber of Commerce or the independent businesses, what the problems a small business has.
Yeah, they're all social networks and they all have their purpose. But I love what you've said, though, Frank, is here you sit as an accomplished human being who've done so well for this country and many countries around the world. Yeah. And you've not been able to rest because you can see still things about today's society that just don't work the way they want.
My focus is, right, I build and then I said, gee, I achieved, and then things slowed down. And then I had a number of reasons. I was involved in building last cars. And I said, gee, that's a non-renewable resource. And we are using so much gasoline, the carbon monoxide, what we inhale, it's just like when you look at the traffic jams, it's just enormous, right? So it was a wake-up call within myself, right? Okay, but it needs a wake-up call in society, right? We cannot, there's 2 billion cars on the road now. If they just use 1 gallon, it'd be 2 billion gallons. It's like the St. Lawrence River flowing down, or the Hudson River. You don't have to be a great scientist to know we got to be out sooner than later. Okay, we're using, because oil, which is a natural substance, it's used for thousands of products, from medicine to, so many products, right?
Household products, you bet.
Okay, so we have solutions that we don't need gasoline-driven cars, huh? We have solutions now, yes. The Chinese are quite smart, huh? They built maybe hundreds of small atomic power stations, right? So they can have millions of large electric cars, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but we can't have it here, huh? Because it would take many years to build the thing here, right? Yeah. And then you have all the high rises with narrow roads, right? The parking, right, is a major problem. So we're using, you see, when we have all the regulators and you get a lot of traffic jams, so that means all the regulation have been badly, because there's so much traffic jams. So the regulators are not that smart. Altogether, that's not, because common sense is missing.
Yeah. Common sense.
We like to be great to hear workers yell out loud and clear, this doesn't make sense, what we're doing here. And they would say, look at that, that would be easier. We should do something else.
That's why we have that battle cry.
Okay.
Ring the bell. Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
Ring that bell.
Okay.
Ring that bell. Frank.
So going back where we want to guide students and, which have it in them, which is great to see, gee, but our advice would be go more into trades and go to department store where you see gadgets and say, gee, could I make that maybe better and cheaper here rather than import? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to go about, right? And especially the smaller things where they have maybe a little more experience already, but they should go to the various department stores and say, gee, I could make this, I could make that, right?
If there's any more department stores left.
Okay. And there gotta be, look, all the other countries use fair import duties, and we gotta use them also, right? Okay, because some countries have less regulations in regards to environment, right? Which is wrong. We gotta have, we have good regulations, as many regulations we have, but it wouldn't have to be that cumbersome.
Yeah, that's clear. Well, Frank, some call you the Magna Man. I think you're a man on a mission. Between your vision, a roadmap, which is the Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, supported by a new conversation about the future of Canada, found in the New Wave Common Sense Business Association. And if people want to learn how to start a business or scale a business your way, the Stronach way, they can come on into the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. So lots of ways to learn more.
But when you start out, right, it's really it's really people. What you gotta do to make people excited, be part of something great. Why they would work with you, right? Because basically, I've always said, nobody works for me, right? They work with me. I work for them, right? Okay, it's a big difference, right? So we don't need rules for smaller. That's why it's so important to know. For small companies, we will classify a company with 300 employees at 300, right? You get your own rules, but let me tell you right now.
Please.
If you want to get some sharp guys, some smart guys, which are willing to work hard, you got to offer something. You'd say, look, you want to be my partner? Or have 10%, 20%. Or look, if we get this thing, we'll share the profits or bonuses. You got it. Otherwise, you cannot build a small thing here, right?
I love that.
Okay, so that is, and when you go past the 300, then we say, look, we don't want to destroy capitalism. Okay, it's the best structure to create things, but it needs harnessing. Over 300 employees, then the law would say you got to share the profits with the employees, right? Maybe to start out with 5%, and maybe another 5%, or maybe up to 15%. Okay, so, but the key is not to destroy the capitalistic system. Okay, let the entrepreneurs, give them the freedom. Give them right now, they tied up in red tape, give them the freedom. We're great entrepreneurs, we're great things. Imagine how Canada would flourish with if we set 500,000 entrepreneurs free.
Massive energy.
Okay, it'd be massive, right? So it's in those terms we got to think. Look, you should be the new wave for common sense. You're part of that. Call it part of that evolution, part of that new wave. We cannot. The politicians have not. Every year they lost more and more monies, right? That's climbing and climbing. It does not work. We must have. There must be, by law, there must be a percentage of bureaucrats to the percentage of the population.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. Frank, we can always talk about so many things, but I love what you've just said is that rather than being a Canadian, rather than being a small business owner, that's watching the moment to become a part of the movement. So rather than being a part of a moment, step into the movement, ring the bell, learn more about the Canadian Economic Charter of Rights, learn about it. That's the vision. That's the roadmap. Join the New Wave Common Sense Business Association. Become a part of our regular meetings, our discussion forums, and the conversation at hand. And if you want to learn more on how to build your business, scale it, or think bigger than you've been actually producing, you can actually look at the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, which is a wonderful place to learn the Frank Stronach way to bigger business. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of common sense.
See, now you got it. Now you've got it. Friends, could we do this again another time, Frank?
Sure.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Frank, thank you so much, Frank, for your time, for your wisdom, but more importantly, for your passion for the Canadian people and everyone looking for an ideal society that they can call home. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no agenda. This has been a great country, been great to me. My conscience tells me that I should transmit those, call it, experiences and wisdom to the younger generation in Canada.
I love it. The Magnum Man, a man on a mission. This has been Richard Dolan in conversation with our very own Frank Stronach. If you want to learn more about all these things we've been speaking about, from the Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities through to the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, where membership, joining, ringing that bell is free. Or if you want to learn from the man himself through his Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, you can easily hit one of the links below in this particular chat room, and we'd be more than happy to connect with you. Until next time, we'll be in another great conversation with our very own Frank Stronach.